Recording away. So morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. I'm Mark. I think everyone probably knows me, but just in case you don't, Mark from the Adeption team. I was a customer of Adeption's 8-9 years ago. Loved it so much I joined the team 7 years ago, and we've evolved these global chats out of a show that I did for a couple of years called Morning Tea with Mark. And all you need to be omnipresent for these sessions is a cup of coffee or tea, and the best form of memory comes in a pen. So capture insights and notes as you go through. We will keep it interactive and flowing for the session, so there's some Mentimeter polls to get your teeth into so you can interact and engage. And of course, I've got my amazing co-host in Corey and our guest in Erin. So Corey, say hi to the team.
Hi, everyone. So happy to see some familiar faces and some new faces. Prior to being with Adeption, I was with Target, the American retailer, and same as Mark, brought Adeption in to do some work with my team and loved it so much, I decided to join. So just about to celebrate my 6-month anniversary here.
Awesome. And Erin, I know, spotlight's on you for the whole session, but feel free to say hi and get into the flow.
Awesome. Well, I was just saying I'm grateful to be here. A little mixture of excitement and anxiety as I see friendly faces and new ones with this format. So you're going to learn more about kind of my journey and maybe why they asked me to join the conversation today. But from a work perspective, I'm rolling off the last 7 years of really being the global head of talent and DE&I, which wasn't the job when I joined, but sort of created it as the job for Masco Corporation, which many people maybe don't know that brand, but we're essentially a global home product holding company, parent company of brands and businesses like Behr Paint, Delta Faucet Company, Hansgrohe, which is our global plumbing business, Kichler Lighting. We have a wellness business that makes spas and pools. So an amazing portfolio of about 14 businesses that really help deliver better living possibilities through beautiful and functional products for your home.
I love it. I wish my background now represented all of your products and services.
I should. I'm not being a good brand ambassador because I'm also, and I guess for context, right, Mark, for the team, I'm like right on the precipice of leaving that formal internal role to go out externally, still supporting Masco, but also hoping to do work with great other partners and in other contexts.
Beautiful. Thanks, Erin. And more from you in a moment. So we'll engage the audience in just a second. Just a reminder of the purpose of these, apart from some reflection time to hop off the busy hamster wheel of life and reflect on your own situation and context. Chance to get some inspiration from colleagues, insights from others around this amazing wisdom of the crowd for this group, and of course from our guest speaker Erin today. To get us started, kind of initiative test of the day, we'll see if I can work the Menti poll and you can work the QR barcode scanner or pop in the instructions on your screen. So just have a look. All you have to do is QR barcode scan or old school 2-finger typing www.menti.com and then enter the code. So I'll give you just a second to do that, and then we'll load at the first engaging questions. All you have to do is give a thumbs up once you're in so that I know that we're ready to roll.
And I knew that Mark was funny through like the last 2 times we've met. Right, Corey? But he just like, how's he so funny when he's just introducing Menti? It's amazing. People,
Especially for early in the morning.
We're in for a fun ride.
Funny. I'm going to put that on my resume now. Maybe I'm going to take
an intro Menti with humor.
Well, Roland's the stand-up comedian. Maybe I'll have a little bit of a swap into that role going forward. So that's a story for another day. Our global marketing leaders, also our comedy and fun leader in the business. So where's home for you? I've had a go at hopefully representing everyone in the group that would be dialing in, with a kind of predominance for New Zealand and the US and Australia. But have a little look through, see if there's a category that captures you. And hopefully our blobs will represent where we are in the world as they come up on the screen. We get a bit of a sense of the mix and mingle here. Oh, cool. A few callers in from Europe even. Nice. Wasn't expecting that. Got to work on my Caribbean trip and India, Sri Lanka kind of connections. Obviously, my network's a little bit lapsed there. And it is 3 a.m. in the morning. So for them, I don't know where their commitment is. Awesome. And we'll move on to the next one, which actually was courtesy of one of our guests. I can't see all of those of you that have dialed in, but John, one of our wider team who freelances with us, he suggested Whanaungatanga, which is a Kiwi word that represents so much, but essentially creating relational intimacy through a sense of relating to where one another are from. And so there's a simple version of that, which is just considering your name. What is your name? Where does it come from? And what have you learned about your own name as you've grown up, if anything? So what's your name? Where does it come from? And what else have you learned about your name? That sense of legacy and standing on the shoulders of those that came before us. This is where I tell Roland off for putting sample in instead of a real answer. Smack bang in the middle. Thanks, Roland. Just can't get the staff these days, Erin. I tried my best, but beautiful. Let's have a look and see what comes through. Should be some really interesting answers as it builds out.
Sample is still
the most amazing.
Trending the most.
Beautiful. As you keep these coming in, the other thing to just keep in mind as we build out our thinking through the day is what questions do you have for Erin or the team as you go through this? And feel free to capture those questions, write them down, or pop them into the Zoom chat. And then between myself and Corey and Erin, we'll be able to just check in on those and respond to them as they fit into the flow of the conversation here. Any that we don't get to, we will provide for Erin afterwards, just to be able to have a look through and give a response that we can send out afterwards in the post summary that we send. So if it doesn't get airtime in this session, know that it's going to be considered, and we'll certainly give you our best response going forwards. Have a little look through some awesome reflections here.
No, are you sitting?
There's a story behind I was meant to be a Stacy. I love that one.
I'm also seeing maybe I'm like more into violence, God of War, warrior or defender, maid of the mountain. These are amazing.
Love it. Love it. And feel free to still with pride, as we often say, any of these little exercises, if they're a great way to get a conversation going with a group that you're facilitating or your own team, then yeah, just still with pride, take unashamedly and enjoy using it. I'll stop the share now and I'll hand over for our rapid fire section with Corey.
Fantastic. Erin, we'd love to get to know you a little bit better. So here's some rapid fire questions for you. So first of all, what do you love best about your work?
We were talking about this yesterday a little bit too. I just love helping or being part of or seeing sort of people shift how they view things and how they start to show up in life or in work.
If you weren't doing this, what would you be doing?
I really feel like I'm like meant to do this, but here's my heritage. My grandmother was a teacher. My parents are teachers. We're teachers, retired now. Aunts and uncles are teachers. Cousins a social worker. I think there's, psychology backgrounds run in the blood kind of. And so mine is sort of manifesting in the workplace. But if I wasn't doing this, I think I would be doing something like this in another space.
How about something not on your resume?
Less serious of an answer, which I like. I spent a summer in college at like this amazing summer camp. And if you're from a Jewish background. This is a big part of their community, and it's really special. I was a camp counselor at one of these experiences, and they had a trapeze, and this was not my assignment. I was the soccer coach there, and I was like, or I think I'm just going to be on the trapeze team. And that like spurred, there's like this moment after that summer to be like, maybe I should just go join a Club Med with these guys. And that's what they do. They teach people trapeze, and they travel around the world, and they're still doing that. I like went back to college and did this, but yeah, that's not on the resume.
But maybe in another life, you ran away and joined the circus.
Basically.
I love it. Okay, what about, so we just talked about names, just did a Menti on names. What about a nickname? Did you have any nicknames growing up, and where did it come from?
Nicknames. So I mean, my last name is a little bit hard to say, but everybody knew it because my dad was like the principal of my high school, and my brother's older than me. So in our community, people know how to say it. Strangers get intimidated, but they, sports, and there was a lot of errands. So there's a bunch of errands, so they would call me Swarty.
Great. What about, what's your newest go-to app on your phone?
It's sort of an app. It's on the phone, so it counts, but I'm not like using it all the time. But a little tip. So it's called Wealthfront, which one of my growth opportunities is like getting my finances in order. It's not my strong suit. And my financial planner, it is like a high interest savings account, 4.5%. So a little tip for anyone who doesn't have their stuff already being in like a high interest savings account, that you can also get some that you can access at any time. So
great tip. What about, what are you reading or listening to right now?
Many things. So I'm a big podcaster, but one of my favorites, which this community, I feel like already probably everyone's like, oh yeah, we know that one, give us something new. But the On Being podcast that Krista Tippett facilitates, I think she just finished this season, which was kind of like a new format, but I don't know, there's like 19 years of archives where this is just a really deep and related to our space. And it's about spirituality, but not really just about spirituality. It's about all kinds of things, and is really amazing. And I think people in this community would really love it if you haven't been exposed to it.
Thanks. And the last one, what motivates you to get out of bed in the morning?
The relationships I have now and the ones that are yet to occur.
Love that. Well, we're going to build some relationships today with our time together. So our topic today is creating leadership development programs that scale. Those of you who've been around Adeption or Jump Shift for a while have heard us say that the traditional approaches to leadership development, what scales doesn't work and what works doesn't scale. And so, Erin, we are delighted to have you here with us today, because you're going to be talking about how you get something to scale. What is it about this topic? I know you've been working on this for years, bringing together your background, talent management, work design, all the things. What is it about this topic that captured your attention?
Maybe it's to like bust the myth of like the Adeption tagline there. Because I feel like you can make stuff at scale really work. And to me, so people who don't know me, I mean, I'm probably going to say some things that are like annoying or you disagree with, or I also, for context, am probably going to swear unintentionally, because this is just like, everyone's like, it's casual and be yourself. And that's the language that feels right to me. So if I offend anyone on any level, I'm just having the like disclaimer. Scale is the only thing that does work.
Yep.
But it's really hard to do.
It is. It is. And that's why we say, you know, that is what we're here to do, is non-traditional approach to make it work and to scale it, and super excited to get into it with you. So Mark, you want to take us into our next Mentimeter?
I'll make sure I don't have what scales doesn't work and what works doesn't scale as a thing on the back of my thing, because you've just myth busted. So thanks for that. Rebrand required.
Well, we haven't myth busted yet. I think the community will tell us after the end of this, did I bust the myth or not?
Let's see if I can even make this slide wake up. Come on, slide. There we go. So the next one is just a little bit of input from the group. We've got some reflections already in here. Just have a think from strongly disagree to strongly agree. What's floating your boat for a focus and your experience of L&D programs? To Erin's point, can you scale it? And where are you guys at with what you're doing for your clients or in your organization? As the answers slowly start populating, Erin, have a little look and just see if there's any themes that stand out that you can spark off, myth bust, take the take the piss out of, or swear at. All good.
Well, I mean, my first reflection, which maybe isn't a surprise, I feel like we have a lot of deep. Okay, we got some more. We got.
It's coming. It's coming.
Okay. Here they come. I was like, is everybody a deep practitioner that's amazing? I might not be able to share much with you. Yeah, so my organization I work with provide high quality for those at entry level, right? Okay. Yeah, so we're starting, maybe less people are doing that. I agree, that's hard. You know, the really foundational, it looks like people are doing a lot of work with senior leaders. And so what I will share today will probably resonate with you guys. And everybody wants to try to scale. So maybe that's a problem and a challenge that everybody's interested in or grappling with.
Beautiful. So question to tee us off, just to get us rolling, then I'll tag back in Corey. We'll kind of tag between us. Think back to when you stepped into your role at Masco. That was some 7 years ago. What was your approach? Maybe a little bit non-normal as you arrived. And then how did that evolve? And what does that approach look like now, having experienced 7 years of doing it and experimenting in all sorts of different ways?
Yeah, and this is sort of the big one that, you know, I'll attempt to consolidate like this 7-year reflection on these bookends, but I'll say this one up front. I'm going to give maybe a little bit more context, and then we'll kind of unfold with some other things throughout some of the other questions. But like, so I'll paint the picture. I walk into this organization 7 years ago, one where they, I think, took a leap on me. Like, I wasn't already at a director level. I wasn't like, you know, I think they saw something in the interview process, but like I hadn't done all these things before necessarily. So one, I think there were some people, I'm younger than everybody that had come into this job, and kind of took a different approach in the interview process. And so new executive team, CEO had only been enrolled with his executive team for almost 2 years, but they had just kind of set the direction, which was coming into a very decentralized organization. This 16 separate, unique companies, varying size and maturity, 20,000 employees, but the corporate headquarters is only 250 people. I got one person. They set a strategy. We'd never had like centers of excellence really that had robust talent, leadership. You know, most of the things you would see in a Fortune 500 company at an enterprise level, we weren't really driving. And they were like, that's your job. And I was like, how many people work here? Because we don't even have a system. We were implementing Workday. We didn't have data, you know, they were doing bits and pieces, you know, good stuff, well-intended, some unconscious bias training over here, started work on some performance management over here, you know, bits and pieces, fits and starts. And in the leadership space, they had a brand new, early career, robust, complicated early career rotational program that was like kind of one of our CEO's desires. And they had an executive program that they did every other year, was still relatively new. Experts from the outside, like a phenomenal business school, was helping them. All the good things, action learning, really great content, phenomenal external facilitators. Maybe they got 15 people through, executive commitment, and they were doing it every other year. And I was like, ooh. One of the things I tell people, which maybe I didn't say in the interview, I was like, I don't really believe in that. And it's not that I don't believe in it, but I'll kind of share that just I felt I'd been adjacent to some of these things. And while they're really deep and amazing, it's for like the special few. And I was also like, how many people are still here? And they're like, well, 7 of those people are gone. It was like, and the thing is pricey. And we're lean and we don't have 20 people to sustain programs like this. And so if we were going to really take on an ecosystem approach, which is really what we didn't call it that, but it was building an ecosystem, a developmental ecosystem that is also about talent and talent management and DE&I and culture and business strategy and the intersection of all these things. But leadership is at the center of all of that. Because if the leaders aren't doing this stuff, you can have a great performance management process, or you can keep saying we're going to like disrupt performance management. But it really comes back to like, how are leaders talking and engaging with their teams and the people around them? And so it wasn't like we had this 10-step plan and we laid it out and said, okay, we're going to go from to, but there definitely was this broader journey beyond leadership development, but it centers on leaders. And 7 years later, I do feel like we built the foundation for this that shows up in a lot of different ways. And we'll get into some of the indicators. I think the other thing I just want to say is like, I am not the same person 7 years later. So when I walked into Masco, I would have said I'm an industrial organizational psychologist. I would have said I'm a deep talent practitioner. I would have said I've done org development, org design, org effectiveness work. I would have never called myself a leadership development person. Would have never called myself a learning person. I would have never called myself a DE&I practitioner. And I think those things are now part of my identity. And largely that is through this work, that everything I'm going to share today, like, because I didn't do any of this really. And I definitely didn't do it alone. And a huge part of this work is us doing the work too. And like the partnership with Nick Petrie and Carl and Adeption in some ways were there at the very beginning. Like it is through that partnership and the collaboration of like a community like this and people with these different skill sets and backgrounds that I think allowed us to like be able to share the stories that I'm sharing today. So I don't think Nick's on, but like to me, I really can't thank him enough for me getting to be part of this community and the work that he helped me bring into Masco. And I call him the magician. So like, if you haven't met him or you don't know what he's doing, he's a little bit of New Zealand magic.
That's
as
awesome,
well as
Erin.
Carl and the Adeption team. I just want to, and Jan and Corey and everyone here, there's a lot of similarities. So anyways, that's a longer one and I'll be more concise as we keep going.
It's great. And for those of you who haven't been here the past couple of months, we did a global chats with Nick and with Jan. So if you want to go back and listen to those, you can. So Erin, here's what I'm interested now. Here's what that prompted for me. I'm curious about the lessons that you learned in trying to scale leadership development at Masco. I've heard you say you don't like the word program.
Yeah, I'm allergic to it.
that you're allergic to the word programs. What lessons did you learn? Help
Yeah.
make us smarter by your experiences.
Oh, well, I don't know if I'll make anyone smarter, but I'll share what I've been grappling with and what we tried to do. I mean, I'm allergic to program, but it's very hard not to use it. One lesson, practically impossible to break people of the mindset around a program. To me, programs have a start and an end. It's like when people are doing other work and they're like, we're doing a culture program. And I'm just like, oh my God, like I'm doing a DEI program. Like it just doesn't make sense to me. We're just doing the work. And so we've attempted to use the word experiences because a lot of what we've done is an agile set of interventions, sometimes implemented in like one-off technically, like a tailored intervention at a point in time to meet a specific need, but it's connected to this larger approach and philosophy and set of principles and practices. And then sometimes we string together a learning journey for a specific group of people at a specific time. And we might do that 1 year and it doesn't look the same the next year because we learned something or it doesn't make sense or there's something going on in the business. And so that iteration is one learning that I think has been very healthy. And with every good lesson, there's like a trade-off on the other side. So it's not like, here's my list of goods and here's my list of bads. It's like every good has like a negative trade-off. It's like when you don't call it a program, like people don't know what the fuck it is. And they're like, what's the name? And we don't brand things because then when you brand something, you can never kill it. It's like, oh, that thing lives forever, even when you've like reshaped it. And then they're like, what happened to such and such acronym? And it's like, well, we learned something, so we changed it. And they're like, you guys are just doing flavor of the month, flavor of the year. I'm like, no, we're not. We're iterating. And we're like a manufacturing organization that believes in continuous improvement. So we're changing it. And you can tell them that. And then they're like, right, but like, what are we doing now? And I'm like, I don't know yet. Like, we're waiting to see what the need is. It's not for the faint of heart as a practitioner. Because you're largely telling a senior stakeholder something they don't want to hear. You're putting them in experiences that they do not love. They don't feel comfortable and we don't give them a lot of details and they're like obsessed with details. They want to be in the design and we're like, we don't want you in the design. That's difficult to be in a space all the time as the internal practitioner. It's almost easier to do that as the external person. When you're the internal one, constantly pushing against stakeholders and saying no to certain senior level people, that's difficult, but important. I have a CEO and a CHRO who are incredible because they fundamentally love to learn. They're very open-minded and they were extremely empowering and they gave us a lot of latitude to try things. It's super messy. People don't get it. I shared that. The power of the crowd for us was a big piece to scaling. And I'll give some examples later, but like, we're not piloting stuff with 10 people. It's like, oh, we have 150 people coming together in this meeting. Let's do something there. 150 people at once. And we'd never done it with anyone before. We're like, well, we think some of these things work. Nick's like, I've done some of this stuff in other places. People love this. It's like, boom, let's just like do it with everybody. And once you do it with everyone, especially like your top 150, if it's good and it's impactful, they'll be like, how do I take this to my team? And they'll bring the pull to everybody else. And it doesn't need to be some massive structured cascade either. It can be, and we did some of that, and that's helpful. Sometimes we didn't, and I think that was helpful. CEO going first, we ask him and his team to go first a lot, and they're usually down for that, which is huge. I call it kind of, language and laughter. Like, how do you make the spaces safe enough to do this work? And I think the language you use, for us, it has to be simple and sticky. And then in the moments when it gets really stressful, you kind of have to make people laugh to like just bring the temperature down enough, but like keep pushing them to go deeper and do more. It is very tricky to make stuff stick, because we have really not done a great job or spent a lot of time and effort packaging, branding, ensuring that we're connecting all the dots all the time, because it looks different every year. So that has been pretty tricky. Those are some of the big things.
I love that you're keeping it real. It is hard, and you have to hold the line. And often, I mean, even before the exec go through it, the internal team has to model it, the uncertainty and being okay with ambiguity and flexing and adapting. And you've described lots of the hard, so there must be some stuff that really makes it worthwhile. Are there stories that just have inspired you that it was worth going through the hard and the pushbacks and people going, but I want to have a performance leadership framework with 22 competencies, please? And tell me the content. What are we going to do on day one at 10-12?
Maybe this is why I'm such a weirdo. Like, those things that I was just saying are like, I find some of this fun. For me, it's sort of fun, but it's really more like when you see it changing. When you see ahas at scale, the energy when we do this work in large groups, but then we create intimacy and a power of 150 people, but they're doing like a peer pod and they're going super deep with everyone doing that in a room together or in a Zoom together. Or a group, their team. Like, we have pictures of like our executive team doing some work and being vulnerable, and like they're like leaned in a circle, and they'll come out having like this big aha. It's like those things, there are tons of signals that were happening that's like, it's fun and it's working, that allowed us to keep saying, let's just keep going, when there are times when you're like, ooh, do we need to give them more? Do we need to set more context? Do we need to slow down? And it helps when Nick's like, it's fine, let's just keep going.
I love that. And just a reflection. I mean, often practitioners talk about no such thing as failure. There's only feedback. And in an agile environment, all of that happens. But there must have been certain times where you're like, that really didn't work. That bombed. We can't learn anything from it apart from never to do that again with this group.
I think there's a lot of things that we probably never even got the feedback back that like it bombed, or in the moment it doesn't work for that person or that team at that time. But then there's been times where like 2 years later, they like remember it and it works for them now. So I'm just more like, I don't know if it works for everyone, and I don't care really. If it works enough and there's enough people getting what we think is enough of the right thing for the right time based on our experience and the research and like what we know would be helpful. We did a lot of deep executive teamwork, and we did several exercises with them at times that many times it doesn't work. It's terrible in the moment when we're like, and then we pull them up and we're all like, so this doesn't feel like it's working because you guys aren't getting the exercise and it's not working for you and you don't like it and the conversation's going. And so why don't we just move on? And everyone's like, yeah, let's move on. And then 2 years later, it's like, we're going to try that one again. Remember when that was terrible? Can we like play the movie back in a different kind of way this time? One of the things that are also hard that I think other companies have done much better than we have is like when you don't have like a standardized toolkit and program and structures, it's really hard to onboard new people, which is a thing that we're trying to work on with Masco now. But that, like, this work is hard to explain. You have to experience it. And so curating an experience when you're onboarding people at all different levels at different times. And then some executives weren't part of an experience 5 years ago, and so now they don't know the nomenclature. That's been tricky, for sure. And a failure that I feel like I should have influenced other things to make sure we had more scaffolding and structure for new people coming in.
That's a great point, Erin. It gets back to your point around, for every, strength and everything that's working, there's a drawback and a downside. So I'm thinking back to our mentee results earlier and people not doing as much with entry level. Tell us about something that's worked for you in terms of scaling development to entry level, because that's obviously the biggest population, the hardest in many ways. What have you learned there?
Oh yeah, I'm useless to this career. Very little. Like, our scope, technically, from the way we're organized in a decentralized way, is that our business units are sort of the ones accountable for that. And so I think this is really our next phase. We've done more at the executive and mid-level, and we focus a lot more on top talent. But how do we, well, and this is where, like, I think adaption comes into play. We haven't done this, but I think adaption is more well suited to help design and support that kind of thing. Some of your partners, and I'm terrible with names, but the food business in New Zealand starts with an F.
Fonterra on foodstuffs, both of them. Yeah.
I think the iteration that she was describing, the next generation of how she's working with you guys, and that next gen of what she's doing with managers, I think they're a really good example of attempting to do, vertical at scale, but not calling it vertical, but infusing the principles. And so I'm excited. This is on our roadmap with Masco to try to build that, maybe later this year and into next.
So quick follow-up before I hand back to Mark. So Erin, that's one of the things that I appreciated about you. For those of you familiar with vertical development, Erin, you called it something different at Masco. Can you talk a little bit about what you called it and what you contrasted it with?
We took, if you asked our leaders what we called it, they would be like, I don't know what you're talking about. They would refer to, like, well, we have the leadership profile, which is like our one pager for behaviors. And then we did have, so our framework, one side is the profile of, like, what good looks like, that basically is, for my IO psychologist friends, is not a measurement model, is not a robust competency model, was really a change management tool to have a common language. And on the other side is, like, our approach to growth, which is basically based on vertical. And we adapted the heat network reflection. Well, see, this is where nomenclature, Carl and Nick, and we're playing with this. And I was like, colliding perspectives. I was like, people aren't gonna get that shit here. Like, I can't use that circle I want the circles, but, like, we can't use that title, but we'll embed it in the definitions. And so heat network reflection, people will say, because we have embedded that as our development framework for the entire organization. And over the years, we keep coming back to it to allow people to go deeper, because people still, I'm like, have you read it? I'm like, read it. Read the one pager. And, like, we're still making sense of that one pager 7 years later.
I love that. And I know one of the other things you talked about was you called the traditional approach traditional, and I think you called the approach you use there as continuous.
Oh, yes. Well, see, I've already changed that again, Corey. Yes, we tried that. And more recently, we have tried to make more of this explicit, because a lot of times we just didn't make any of it explicit. So we never tell people what we're doing. which is the constant tension between like Nick and Carl and me. I'm always like, we have to tell them more. We have to tell them something. We have to give them a little bit more. And they're like, yeah, they're not going to get it anyway. So just let's put them through the experience and try to come back to it. But I will say lately, we've been using foundational instead of horizontal.
Oh,
And then that was what we used to call traditional, but we changed it to foundational. And then we're calling vertical transformational. And
Okay.
honestly, it is sticking more.
okay, that's good to know. So here's what we'd like to do now. We'd love to open it up. So what are you curious about? What would you like to ask Erin? Feel free to pop it into chat. Feel free to come off mute and ask your question. What are you curious about? Alex, do you want to come off mute and ask this question? This is a great one.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thanks, Erin. That was really, really interesting. Yeah, I suppose we are currently kind of grappling with this sort of challenge at a cultural level. So curious to know whether you've had any experience with this idea of, separating out the two concepts. Obviously, conflation of development, meaning, hierarchical promotion, etc., is fairly embedded for a lot of people. So it's just something that we're trying to really get to the root of in terms of how we can kind of decouple those two concepts and say development is more about personal growth than it is about necessarily growth within the organization, or we're quite a flat organization as well, which makes that somewhat challenging.
No, I think those are always sort of perennial issues. I guess we haven't had to explicitly address it just like that. I think we would probably say it's and both. And it's not just growth here. This will help you be a better, we don't have a slide like this, but it's like, this will help you be a better person. This helps you grow as a person, which will help you get more opportunities, have more impact here. It might help you get different jobs here, or it might help you get different jobs somewhere else. Like if someone asked me this question, my coaching would be, if you're not getting, the way we sort of frame it is growth is happening around you all the time. Development is happening all the time if you're extracting it, if you're intentional and you're extracting it from the work. And then I would also probably end up coaching to say, if you aren't getting the growth here, I'm more comfortable saying maybe we're not giving it to you, and maybe you have to explore somewhere else, and maybe you'll come back to us.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I totally agree. It is more about the conversation around personal growth as opposed to anything else. I think it's the opportunities that we have, we're trying to embed more into everything that we do, as opposed to it being a real binary kind of thing. It's like you're either developing or you're not developing.
Right.
It's like you can be constantly kind of trying to weave that into what you're doing.
But if you're in their shoes and they're like, I hear you, but like, I want more money, or I want something bigger, I want more, some of that's real. They are blocked sometimes. And that's a different structural issue culturally than what a development strategy can solve.
Thanks, Alex. Did you see Mary's question here?
Yeah, I was just making sure I wasn't, aren't some needs persistent? Yeah, no, I mean, when I say needs, it's more about, how do I describe? Like, we're always just watching for the right opportunity to insert, infuse, reinforce, further spread the foundational work we're trying to, that really is based on vertical. I guess that's what I mean by the need. Like, we're not doing a needs analysis for like a certain population, but as an example, this year, A persistent need for almost every company is like supporting mid-level leaders. Super hard place to work. Tons of influence, sideways, up, down. Our organizations are lean. Coming out of COVID, people are exhausted. Our business's demand was off the charts in COVID, and now it's like we're getting affected a little bit, not crazy yet, but like the recession is coming, or it's already here, and these leaders are getting crushed. Designing a solution that supports them without them just feeling like more, this is more time, this is more things, I can't do this, are you really helping me? And we kind of need them to spread it. So that's really what we've designed this year. And we were very thoughtful about what does this particular population need, along with things that we already know just work for all leaders. I don't know if I'm answering people's questions well enough. So Mary, if that's not helpful. Individual leadership experience.
And then, yeah, Elise, let's go to your question next. Do you want to come off mute and talk a little bit about this question?
Sure. Hi, team. Hi, Erin. Thanks so much. So yeah, my question is, adding on to what I shared, how are you thinking through, and I'm thinking of transformational or vertical development, thinking through growing individuals through individual experiences like one-on-one leadership development coaching, if you even have it, alongside the group and the team. And, there's this systemic piece, right? Like how is the team growing vertically, and then the individual piece. And with everybody at different levels, it can get really, like super fun and super complicated.
You just described what we're doing. We have all of it in some way, shape, or form that's available. And it's like how we keep learning how we pair that intervention with that population. So, maybe we shouldn't like be spotlighting other vendors, but like, our coaching partner is through BetterUp, which also is because they help us scale executive coaching or coaching in a broader way, with how we kind of pair licenses and break those down, and how we can give a pool of licenses and coaching as an intervention, either for a group of individuals, an individual, part of an experience or not part of an experience. And our team is just more agile about how we use coaching, but with a wraparound toolkit. And then sometimes it's paired with a longer learning journey. Team is really where we spend it. That is like the unit of analysis we are really focused on all the time. So when we're doing stuff systemic or at scale, there's always a team aspect. So in almost every like scaled intervention, which I really have used our leadership conference as a massive platform and lever for the last 7 years, because we bring top 150 roughly together, and that is our executive team, and then the executive teams of the businesses. And in that session, we are doing things at 3 levels. We're always doing something at the individual level, we're curating something at the team level, and then we're bringing people up to try to see like the big we collective picture. And so we're trying to infuse that when we're doing big things. And then we're also doing deep dives with teams. We're always trying to make things be like, how can you take this back to your team? Like it's a huge part of the thought process. If we're ever doing something at an individual level, how can you take it to the team? Exactly. Me, we, and us, we literally talk like that.
Yeah,
for sure.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Cool. And just one final question that you probably saw in there from Cosmin around the scalability development, and then we'll just start to share what's coming up and hopefully get those insights and actions in the chat at the same time. So Erin, any thoughts on that question from Cosmin about scalability development approach, evolving that scalable element is diminishing, etc.?
I'm processing to make sure I'm making sense of the question in the right way. So if Cosmin wants to come off and make sure is it that the way does doing it at scale have some diminishing returns? Is that how I should be thinking about that? Is it evolving?
Yeah, sorry. Hopefully you'll get good results. Where I'm coming from was the fact that if you continuously reiterate, probably diminish that part of what I'm going to call the conventional wisdom of what scale stands for, where you're saying you're kind of building it once and use it many times, for example, would be one definition that we could apply to scalable. But I don't want to impose my definition of scalable. So I'm keen to understand when you are thinking about a program scalable, how do you think
I'm
about
tracking.
it? Thank you.
Yeah, so I guess when I think about scale from a leadership development perspective is how do we get, I'll just call it the magic. It's like magic. Tools, tips, practices, methodologies that can literally change how you act and your mindset of how you show up at work in your personal life to as many leaders as possible at a cost-effective way that don't require like 20, 30 people internally with millions of dollars externally. How do you get more of that to more people? And yes, the trade-off is you don't go as deep, but you got to find the best of the best, and we focus on the most impactful stuff, and we're trying to get it to as many people as possible. And the trade-off is sometimes people can't, the impact is very hard to measure. It's hard for some people to see it, meaning what are we doing to do this? Because they can't always see it. I will tell you though, like we're getting more people, more seeds planted, more spread, I think, happening. And I can feel it through just like, I'm watching an organization that meetings are not the same. Leaders don't talk the same. Their language has changed. We're having different conversations. Is that happening everywhere, every team across every company of ours? Like, no. But over time, with repetition at the right level, I think the ecosystem or the foundation of that hopefully is going to be sustained. And to me, that's way more scalable than doing 15-person cohorts.
Thanks, Erin. That's cool. And yeah, just to Corey's point in the chat, you may have seen, just take a moment to reflect on those key insights that have triggered in your thinking, any specific actions that you're going to be taking as a result, and any final questions that have come up for you through the process, because you may be going away in inquiry, which is also really valid. So pop those into the chat, and then I'll share a little bit about some things coming up and an opportunity for Erin to talk through some photos of an amazing event that she experienced, which I'm slightly biased about. Cool. So I'm going to pop some links into the chat now, just for some of the events I'll share and talk to. Here's the Menti slide, bear with me. So next global chat that's coming up, date for your diary, click and link. Today, we've been talking about scaling without tech. I know Erin's talking about Masco moving to scaling with tech and leveraging adaption. Our founder, Carl, who worked with Nick and supported Erin, is going to be talking about, if you are scaling with tech, what's some learning from doing that? He will share some stuff around adaption and lessons learned from the SaaS business, but there's lots of other organizations that he's been involved with that he'll also share. He's pretty great at providing a balanced view of great technologies that can enable scaling that's going to be really impactful. So don't expect a sales pitch, expect a really good wide-ranging discussion from Carl. He's so deeply insightful in that space. We've also got coming up elevating group development, which I'll come back to in a moment. But beforehand, just want to flag, we've got some vertical incubators, which will bring out the Erin photos in just a minute. So the global tour last year was Fonterra's HQ in Auckland, Melbourne Business School over in Melbourne, no surprise, and Google HQ over in the US. We again are coming to Melbourne. We're coming to London and the Shard, and we're also coming over to the US. So the link's in the chat to find out those different areas that we're running things. And here's a little photo to queue up Erin for what was your experience like, and what the hell is that thing in the top right?
Oh my God, isn't this amazing? So yeah, proud alumni of the incubator. And honestly, even though I feel like we were doing a lot of this work, coming into a space where we also have to get on the balcony with practitioners and just a space to learn. So what you're seeing on the screen, one is all my like new best friends, because it's just amazing people. And I went at a time in my personal life where I was in this big transition, and this community was super impactful for that and for this work we were trying to design the next phase of this ecosystem work, to be honest. And that's my like hand sketch on the plane of like my design and like how I hand sketch some of this stuff. And then one of the exercises is to use Play-Doh, and I had like an anxiety. I was like, oh God, I'm bad at art, not good at art. This isn't going to be good. My brother got all those genes. And so what you see is my art project to represent sort of the doing this stuff at scale and like with an ecosystem strategy. And Carl popped over. He goes, oh, look, it's just like you like did your little design here, Erin, with my art project. And it just pulls you out. They did some great experience. Can't speak to it enough. And Lisa's here, who is like, was in the other incubator on the other side of the world. And her and I went to graduate school together at George Mason. And now we've reconnected through this community. And it's just like, if anyone over there, you guys should talk to what Lisa's doing. They're doing some super cool shit. So sorry.
Come to the incubator and do super cool shit and do an art project. I love it. And essentially we blend the digital experience, so people are learning and growing on the way in, sharing ideas and concepts, creating some heat zone experiences and stretch, even just through recording a video of how you would describe vertical development in your organization so it might land, which means that mentally you're primed to make the most of that couple of days together face to face. It's called an incubator because we want people to prototype, share, bounce off ideas, get peer feedback, evolve it 3 or 4, or maybe even 5 times through the 2 days. You'll reiterate and maybe even scratch it and redesign from scratch because your thinking's changed so much through the process. So yeah, really advocate. This will help anyone to design meaningful experiences in their organizations or with their clients. And then the other thing that can be helpful for those that want to evolve it is elevating group development. So once you've designed it, how do you hold the space and facilitate more group coaching facilitation approaches for bringing vertical into the space? So you've designed it, but now you need people to facilitate. And we thought it would be easier to facilitate these kind of conversations, but holding the space when you're not quite sure where it's going to go is much more like group coaching. And amplifying, even one-on-one, it's hard. When you amplify the group, it does require a different level of presence and some different structures in your back pocket to make that possible. So if you want to learn how to facilitate leveraging those principles, then that's a great way of doing it. And we've got a number of those programs kicking off. Now, enough of the sales promo piece. Back to you, Corey. I think you've got a final rounding question just as we close out today's session.
I do, Erin. Thank you so much. This has been amazing. Thanks to everyone for joining. Before we let you go, Erin, what motto, quote, or saying would you put on a billboard?
Yeah, so this one I want to make sure I get it right, because it's like, people probably won't get this, but that's okay. So my significant other, who comes from like, on every dimension, he comes from a different background. His great-grandmother played a huge role in his life, and he always quotes her. Her name's Miss Pearl. So we got pearls of wisdom here. So I'll leave you with this one. Baby, it's your little red wagon. You can push it or pull it. Get it home any way you can.
I love it. Thanks, everyone.
What a way to close out. So drag your red thing home. Make the most of the rest of your day. Erin, it's been a pleasure. Corey, as always, love it, love it, love it. Have a great rest of your day, your week, and we'll hopefully see you on the next Global Chat. Go well. See you soon. Bye.
Bye, all.